問咧，你呢個 folic acid 咁係咪即係加咗呢個啲特別？只不過加係點？
最主要指出係。所以佢唔係就咁加落去，先加幾多？
邊個位先係加到呢？
邊個位先係加到？
係咪呢個 process？
你見記住嗰個 step， 呢個係冇加，呢個就係因為個 cup share 係兩個一樣。呢個咧？
呢個就係呢個。咁下面呢個係咪就係呢個？
呢個咧？
咁係咪即係呢個 process？
咁呢個咧？呢個。咁你睇下呢個 reaction。
咁係咪即係呢個 reaction 加到？
加到 cup。呢個即係呢個係由呢度去到呢度，再由呢度就去呢度。咁就所以就要咁啦。所以就唔係話就咁樣加個 stage 3落去嗰度，就成為 beta。即係佢要 go through 呢個 step， 做咗呢度先，然後跟住斬開咗個 bond 嘅 N 嘅時候咧，就變咗 N5 beta。
咁如果係食物嗰啲 folic， 咁佢都係由呢度開始，即係佢都要變 pH。
係啦。
咁你同 acid 一樣 folic acid， 即係你呢個 folic acid 佢都要變 pH。
所以
但係你食物都要變 pH。
食物就已經係 THF 嚟啦。
食物就已經係 THF。
即係食物好多時都係 THF 嚟㗎。
咁即係呢個 folic 即係 folic acid。
佢可以變 folic acid form 都可以變 THF form。
THF form 喺呢度。
即係只不過就係佢，如果你食喺個 food 裏邊，即係如果用呢個拉嘅時候咧，佢 show 出嚟咧，佢 show 出嚟就係要斬開呢啲，跟住加佢呢隻 food 就可以出嚟。但呢一個科係一個 technical form。OK，但係咧，如果你話講緊規定或者係加落啲食物度 as 呢個 addition 嗰個 addition 就係
咁啲食物係由呢度開始嘅。
由呢度開始。咁啊，你可以講係開始，即係你可以理論上你可以講係開始。即係
我哋嘅食嘅有啲人食咗落去咧，轉
嗱，你睇翻即係其實咧，所以咧有好多唔單止佢用嗰個 presentation。第一件事我做嘅就係，如果我哋除咗 folic acid 呢樣嘢先，即係我哋除咗 folic acid 呢樣嘢先，咁咧我哋煲得就會係有即係會同一啲 folic 即係 folic 嘅，或者 folic acid 咧 ，which is present in nature， 但係唔多。但係咧，如果 in case 佢喺度嘅時候咧，佢一定要接住呢個，再接住呢個。咁咧喺我哋個 food 裏面咧，好多時候係 system 方面。 folate，嗰啲佢直接係咁直接係呢個咁所以第一件事即係記住，因為你一個你吸收咗之後就會5-10咁。
即係呢個已經係5-10。即係呢個已經係
喺嗱 in cell 嘅 folate extract is formed absorption inhibition takes down 咗跟住 methyl group 嘅 folate，但係嗰個 methyl group 嘅 folate 咧就係 3 即係3個 step，
係啦。
即係唔係就掟夠，掟個灰度，因為呢一個係一個要嗰種嘢，即係佢唔可以講呢個。
It's okay.
唔係，我意思係我話你唔可以用呢個直接嘅，即係呢個 reversible reaction，呢個 irreversible，呢個 irreversible 咁所以要去呢度咧，一定要揾到。咁只不過佢呢個揀法都冇感覺。
咁係咪即係呢個方法可以係5-10？
我話呢個唔係5-10，呢個5 meter 啊嘛，呢個6 meter。
即係呢個
即係
5-10呢度個。
呢度會以前即係佢將佢因為呢個原本身嘅嘢全跟住呢度跟住呢個，咁即係 absorption， 佢 absorption 係5%，咁係啊，咁但係咧即係但係呢個係佢跟住就掟去咁佢又要再佢又要。
咁呢個 M，
咁呢個都 active，
呢個 M 字，
呢個一條呢個去到嘛，即係咩叫 active， 咩叫一次咧？其實就即係話，因為佢可以去翻嘢，佢先可以靠 B12去翻呢度，咁所以佢先都要但係你睇翻呢一個5-10可以去呢度，可以去呢度，呢度又可以去呢度，OK， 咁由呢一種咧，又可以無聲去到呢度，但係呢一個咧，就唔可以，即係一定要靠呢一個 step 先有。咁所以即係佢記時一定要記住，即係佢而家可以走唔同嘅 path， 佢係靠 B12， 咁所以先至即係做嘅。呢個唔呼應我。
即係翻返去你
係啦，呢個就 pH 呢個上升咧，呢個 pH 嘅，呢個就5 meter。
咁但係呢個
呢個 B12就係呢個咯，係啦。B12 就拎咗呢個啦 ，B12就拎咗一個6 咁但係係啦，咁但係B12就唔係自己愛㗎嘛。B12係咪自己愛㗎？B12將嗰個CHP group 拎咗出嚟，就掟翻嚟俾呢個。
買呢個呢度，個 contract
即係呢個未必係最ideal嘅做，即係可能我自己覺得先。 加3加4出現 test，
我夠。
唔係 test 都係呢個 step， 都係呢個 step， 即係只不過我呢個 test 做咗呢度就掟出嚟嘅時候就係消暑。
咁呢啲話題可能有好多先穿喎，即係加呢一種真係你就
當你呢度斬咗啲收骨嘅時候，斬咗啲肌肉嘅時候，就非常長。即係未斬之前叫做 polyglutamate tetrahydrocannabinol， 即係 polyglutamate form vitalized
我真係試
俾咗個花青，然後跟住就掟出。咁其實所以喺個掟出嘅時候，即係可以喺大嘅身體裏邊咁有呢啲嘅，只不過有啲講到個煙感，有個卡唔係試所以係試呢個就所以點解我呢個5個 C 喺度，即係呢個咧，你唔好講緊我 H 出嚟，你淨係講緊個 carbon 啫。carbon 咁佢4個光，嗰個 carbon 個 carbon 邊度嚟啊？C 嚟咯。哦，C 呢個就係兩個個 C 咁呢個就加呢個咁但係佢加落嘅時候就係 share between enzyme， 跟住佢先至高呢一 step 斬咗個 enzyme，
所以可能出呢個係5係因為佢係呢
個花枝，
即係點解可能5係因為佢應該係要 share
即係佢去咗嗰度先，跟住插水。
即係其實呢度去呢度中間係。
我哋測驗嗰陣時喺 class test 度咧，由第7至11課，咁第11課嗰堂咧，其實都係有 trace 就上一堂嗰堂就係測驗啊，
去10日。
哦，即係7至10啫，唔係7至11，因為嗰個我哋嘅 time table 咧就7到70啊嘛。
send 呢種係
係 OK， 即係4堂，7、8、9、10。
test 完之後咧，就有加多一堂，就係 case study。
係。
咁所以大考就執即係大考就連埋 case study，但係你 test 就冇 case study，就係4堂。
OK， 即係 test 嗰度就係7至11，7至15就7、8、9、10係冇錯。但係之前1至6嗰就唔 test。明白。好。
Okay. We better start, otherwise we just have 1 hour. Okay, good question 啦。考試嘅話點解係7至11？其實7至11係講翻到 Excel， 即係我有4堂啊嘛。咁你哋10月21號有 test 啊嘛。 12月21號嗰個咧就係呢4堂嘅 test。
係。
OK， 7、8、9、10，總之就或者總之我喺4堂啦。OK， 我唔好理佢啲 number 啦。OK， 但係 final examination 咧，因為我考完個 test 之後咧，就會有一堂添啊嘛，就係 case study 啊嘛。咁嗰堂 case study 咧就連埋喺 final exam 嗰度嘅。
即係 final exam 都要考7至11啦，即係考埋晒全都要。
Okay, now so we go to B12. So B12 structure very complicated. Don't worry about it. Only thing that you need to have an appreciation of is that it's called cyanocobalamin. Why called cyanocobal? It has a cyanide CN group and then a cobalt in the middle of this ring, which therefore gives you the name cyanocobalamin. So when we say cyanocobalamin, we are referring to vitamin B12, okay? So you need to remember this cyanocobalamin. Now, so in terms of absorption, the best way is to give you this diagram, and I'm not sure if you have encountered this before, but it's very easy to understand. B12 is very sensitive to the acidic environment of the stomach. So it first will have to be protected by a protein which we refer in general as an R protein, and R protein has different names depending on which paper you look at and the year that it was published. In general, the R protein is the same as heptachlorine or transcobalamin 1. Okay, so as long as you know that the R protein will protect this B vitamin from the harsh environment of the stomach. Once it gets into the small intestine, then the R protein will be removed, will depart, and then it will be linked to another protein which is called intrinsic factor, IF here, and that will carry the vitamin, okay, throughout the small intestine, and its absorption location is ileum. Now, ileum is the distal part, the later part of your small intestine. Okay, so you have the duodenum here, jejunum, then ileum. Okay, now IF is important because absorption of B12 is receptor mediated, and it has to recognize the IF B12 complex. Okay, so without IF, you have no absorption of B12. Okay, so that is an important aspect. Now, then, so this part is basically a description of what I just said. Once absorbed, then it will be bound to a protein which is called transcobalamin in the blood. Okay, so what you see here is yet another diagram. Okay, for you to appreciate. So HC will be the heptachlorine or R protein, and then you have the IF, okay, which will be for the ileum absorption. So then the cobalamin, that is CBL, sent out into the blood, will be bound to protein which is called transcobalamin 2. Okay, key functions of B12 is a number that we will highlight. The first one is the formation of the so-called myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is the fatty material that coats your peripheral nerves. Okay, so for nerves that comes from the central nervous system to different parts of the body, the nerve will be surrounded by some fatty material, and this fatty material are referred to as myelin. Now, this myelin is important in terms of protecting the nerve as well as to allow an increase in the speed of signal transmission. Because what you see here is that the nerve will be coated with myelin, but then at different locations, there will be no myelin. So when you have a nerve impulse triggering down, the nerve impulse will jump from one node to another. So that speeds up the entire process of signal transmission. Okay, so demyelination, that means breakdown of the myelin, okay, will therefore affect the speed of the nerve transmission. And so you will have a variety of problems such as coordination and neuropathy, which basically is a nervous system problem. Now, the cause of the demyelination, as I said, is related to B12 deficiency, has been linked to, now, not only these two, okay, but there are other mechanisms which is still under investigation. B12 deficiency is known to cause accumulation of these two compounds, in addition to many other situations, okay? But for our purpose, we just highlight these two, okay? So they are usually, B12 deficiency is usually associated with an increase in what we call homocysteine, that is the compound that we just talked about, and then another compound which is called metabolimic acid, and we will talk about that in a minute, okay? So now, this is something which you are familiar with, okay? You have seen this diagram, but just in different form. Folate cycle, methionine cycle. This is your methionine synthase, the MS. Okay, B12 dependent, gives you methionine. Methionine gives SAM. We talk about that. SAM is the donor that gives out methylation reaction, and then go down here to give rise to homocysteine. Homocysteine will pick up the methyl group from B12, and then with this enzyme give you back methionine. Okay? Now, so here, homocysteine. It comes from here, goes to here, and then can go down here. So there are three pathways. This one is generating homocysteine. This two will be removing homocysteine. So any one of these three problems, or more than one problem, will give you an increase in homocysteine. Okay? And level increase in folate with or without the presence of B12 deficiency. So that means either folate deficiency or B12 deficiency can increase homocysteine. Why? Because this part is dependent on both. You need B12, you need folate. Okay? Now, so why you have an accumulation of another compound which is called MMA? Now, so if you remember when we talk about biotin, we say propionyl-CoA use biotin dependent enzyme propionyl carboxylase that gives you D-methylmalonyl-CoA. D-methylmalonyl-CoA needs to be further metabolized eventually to the TCA intermediate, succinyl-CoA. But at this point, okay, for L-methylmalonyl-CoA to be converted to succinyl-CoA, you require an enzyme mutase, which is B12 coenzyme. Okay, so this step, L-methylmalonyl-CoA to succinyl-CoA, which enters in the TCA cycle, is depending on this enzyme, methylmalonyl-CoA mutase, which requires B12. Okay, so chain fatty acid metabolism or branch chain amino acid metabolism can give rise to this. So if you have the deficiency, then this methylmalonyl CoA will give up the CoA and become methylmalonic acid, and then will be present in the blood as well as the urine. Now, so you can imagine that this pathway is not folate dependent, right? So it only depends on B12. So methylmalonic acid accumulation, okay, will be a unique metabolite that you can measure as an indication of B12 deficiency, okay? But I will talk about this a little bit later. There are some problems with this, okay? Now, so you can measure methylmalonic acid, homocysteine, okay? Or you can measure the bound concentration of copoamine in the blood, which is the transcopoamine, in terms of diagnosing B12 status. Now, the problem with MMA, okay, just focus on this diagram, okay? The problem with MMA is that a lot of people who are B12 deficient, okay, do not have a very high level of MMA. This is a plot of many different people, right? So serum, B12, and MMA. Now, if MMA is only derived from B12 deficiency, okay, then presumably you will have a more linear relationship. But this is sort of like this, and so, and that's why in this particular study, which is quite recent, it shows that a large proportion of individuals with a decreased serum of B12 still has a normal MMA concentration. Okay, so elevated MMA concentration were more strongly associated with poor functional performance than B12 deficiency, than serum B12. So MMA is a marker, but it may not necessarily be reflecting a true concentration of vitamin B12. So as I said, there's some problems. So again, we always say don't use just one single parameter for indication. So, but in general, in terms of a specific marker, then MMA is a specific marker for B12. So what's shown here is, depending on the concentration of B12, if you look at B12, a normal will be greater than 300 picomole. So 300 picomole is here, okay? Is here. But if you look at the people with 200 are sort of in the middle range, but they still have what they consider a normal level of MMA. So the MMA may not be a particularly sensitive marker to reflect serum B12. Okay, because measuring MMA is easier and cheaper than measuring serum B12. That's why they want to make sure that MMA is a sensitive indicator. But in this case, what they indicated is that it may not be as sensitive as what they want. Okay, now when we say functional parameters, in this case, what they are measuring are muscle strength, and that is hand grip strength. And then this is a test, a quantitative test, okay, which we will talk about later. So when you have a autoimmune problem which not able to absorb B12, which is pernicious anemia, so also gives you macroblastic anemia, okay? So as I said, pernicious anemia is autoimmune, which have antibodies for intrinsic factor. So if without the intrinsic factor, you cannot absorb B12. Now, populations that are at risk of folate as well as B12. So for folate, that's what we talked earlier. And of course, pregnancy, okay, alcoholism, any convulsion drugs, oral contraceptive, these are B12 deficiency elderly. Elderly are at high risk of both folate as well as B12. So pernicious anemia will be for B12, okay? Now, gastrectomy, what is gastrectomy? Removal of the stomach, okay? So removal of the stomach, there are a lot of diseases that will ask for a removal of the stomach. If you have cancer, okay? And then down here, ileal recession. What is ileal recession? Cut off the ileum. That is the lower part of your small intestine. Again, due to various diseases, people may have to remove the ileum. So without the stomach, you don't have intrinsic factor. Without the ileum, you don't have the receptor site for B12 absorption. Okay? So that's the situation. And then elderly, vegetarians. Okay? Because B12 is available basically only from animal products, not plant products. So vegans may develop, vegans means they don't eat milk, meat, fish, things like that, okay? May develop B12 deficiency. But B12 deficiency may take a long time to appear because we are born with a reasonable reserve amount in the liver. Also, there are some reabsorption mechanism of B12. So it may take 5-10 years for B12 to develop. Particularly for those people who are meat eaters and then convert to vegetarians, then it may really take a long time for them to have a showing of inadequate intake of B12. Okay? But B12 is very common, actually, very common. These are already quite old data, okay? In this case, 6% of those greater than 60 years old has plasma less than the cutoff point, and 20% has marginal status. But these are, as I said, quite old data. And if you see my subsequent slides, you will see that the percentage of B12 actually is higher. But it's very effective to bump up your B12, okay, with supplementation. Now, so what is the problem of B12 if you have B12 deficiency alone? If you have B12 deficiency alone, but with adequate folate, you end up still having problem with folate, and that is because of this triangle. Okay? This step is irreversible, one direction only, and that is a B12 dependent reaction. Okay? So imagine you have a lot of folate. Okay? That goes to here, that goes to 510, that goes to other reactions. But if some of the folate goes to here, then it cannot go to here. So you have a blockade here if you have B12 deficiency. So this is called methylfolate trap. That is, the folate is trapped in this 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate form, and that is due to B12 deficiency. And that is fairly common in general malnutrition, such as kwashiorkor, in which you have an overall decrease in the amount of quality of the diet. Again, also if you have a inadequate intake of methionine, which is of course, stage 3, the methyl donor source, then you also have problems. So the methylfolate trap is specifically referred to the situation when you have B12 deficiency in the presence of adequate folate. Okay. Now, so we talked about a little bit. This is going to be quite easy. Okay. So what are the situations with the B12, not B12, B vitamins in general? Because there are a lot of conditions that are associated with B12 folate, but may also then link to the other B vitamins, such as vitamin B6 and B2, etc. Highlighting some will be, for example, neurotube defects, which is abbreviated as NTD, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and so on. Now, the problem is, I want you to distinguish between the two. True dietary deficiency, that means not adequate intake, okay, versus what we saw, what we call potentially functional deficiency. Functional deficiency means, well, you have adequate amount of vitamin in the diet, but you may not be able to absorb it, or you may have problems in the enzymes that will not make certain conversions. And the example that I'm showing you will be polymorphism. So polymorphism in certain genes leads to a reduced efficiency of certain enzymes, and therefore will lead to a blockade of metabolism. So neurotube defects is a congenital problem, and that is just improper closure of the neurotube. And so it will be a serious problem and partly related to impairment of the formation of the DNA, which is this step, the DUMP to DDMP, which is mediated by gametinate synthase. Okay, so what you see here is a statistics of the NTD, okay, over time. Now, this is actually a old slice because, as you can see, the incidence of NTD is dropping, or was dropping. And this arrow indicates the time when there is a global fortification program, okay, fortifying folate into certain food, as well as also advising and revising the folate requirement for pregnant females. So you can see that after this sort of peak here, then you can see a steady drop. But folate supplementation doesn't eliminate NTD totally. So that's why NTD is not only caused by folate deficiency. It could be caused by some other situations, but definitely folate supplementation has reduced the incidence of NTD. So you can see the pink one are the situations of before fortifications, and then the purple one are after, and incidence with different locations. Folate deficiency. Okay, so one carbon, basically what it comes down to is, I just want to make the point, folate deficiency and or folate-related gene defects play important roles, but are not the only determinants of NTD. So this is just basically the key points of this showing you this abstract. Now, so this is the incidence of folate situation in China. Okay, so it was published just a few years ago, and again, the incidence has decreased, but there are still a substantial amount of individuals with a relatively speaking low folate, even with the supplementation program. Now, so homocysteine is a biochemical marker, as I said earlier, and this is one of the markers for folate deficiency. Okay. Now, as I said, homocysteine is influenced by 3 pathways. Okay. So the three enzymes are here, okay? The three involved enzymes are here, okay? Which controls the concentration of the level of homocysteine, okay? Now, so homocysteine can be due to folate deficiency, or can be due to B12, or can be due to, or maybe even sometimes B6. But in the presence of adequate amount, if you have abnormalities of these enzymes, then you may also end up having a abnormal homocysteine, okay? Now, so the diagram here basically is a repeat of the previous diagrams, only it is shown in different format. The focus still is on homocysteine. Remember in this slide, in the previous slide, we say three enzymes that are responsible and may be causing high homocysteine. The first one is methionine synthase. The second one is the enzyme that metabolize homocysteine to other sulfur amino acid. And the third one is the 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. So what you see here is this is the homocysteine. Okay. Now, homocysteine level may be increased if you, because homocysteine goes this way to other sulfur amino acid. And so if you have problem here, then you may end up having increase in homocysteine. Okay. The next one, if you have problem with methionine synthase, okay, say for example B12 deficiency or folate deficiency, you end up having increase in homocysteine. Okay, and then there is also another situation, and that is here, 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. What is this enzyme? This enzyme will make 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. Okay, will make 5-tetrahydrofolate. Now, the 5, when you have 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, then of course you will depend on this enzyme to metabolize homocysteine. Okay, but there are polymorphism in this particular enzyme that has been shown to have an elevated homocysteine level as well. So we'll show to you later. Okay, so why homocysteine is damaging? Because there are some studies indicating that it may cause leaky cell linings. Okay, so your endothelium may be disintegrating. You may have a decrease in cell adhesion, and also the homocysteine may promote platelet adhesiveness. So that means it will increase your blood clot risk. So increase in risk of cardiovascular disease has been estimated. So every 5 nanomole per milliliter of homocysteine concentration increase will be equivalent to a 20 milligram per deciliter of plasma cholesterol increase. We know that increase in plasma cholesterol will increase cardiovascular disease. So it's trying to equate the risk of homocysteine to that of cholesterol. So what is the usual cutoff? 15 nanomole per milliliter. And many elderly have elevated homocysteine level and suboptimum B vitamin status. Now, so what we are going to show you, this is not something which is particularly important. It just shows you that it is a graded rather than a threshold effect. That means when the concentration gradually increase, the risk increase, rather than you hit a certain level. Okay, so the risk is totally dependent on concentration. Now, so this is what we are referring to with 3 of the reactions that control the homocysteine concentration. One methionine going to homocysteine. Okay, so this is the transmethylation pathway. Then the regeneration of methionine, which is the remethylation pathway, and then the homocysteine going to the other sulfur amino acid, which is called the transsulfuration pathway. So homocysteine is playing a central role in these pathways, and so any of this problem of these reactions will lead to an increase in homocysteine concentration. So diagrammatically, what you see here will be homocysteine going down to sulfur amino acid. Okay, this is the sulfur amino acid pathway. Then homocysteine going to methionine, methionine regenerating homocysteine. Okay, so you have your methylation, remethylation, and transsulfuration pathway. So showing you is a many years ago study in Taiwan. So looking at male and female at different age groups, okay, with this is the mean homocysteine concentration, and then the percentage of the population with high homocysteine. So if we just look at the percentage, okay, so at 65 to 69, you have 18%, and then when it hits 80 years old, it's 38%, okay. Females are not as bad, but you also still see a rather gradual increase. So age is definitely a factor that affects your blood homocysteine concentration. When you get older, you will get high level. This is yet another study trying to correlate some variables. So what you have in here will be age, gender, total homocysteine, and this is what we are trying to focus on. This one is a test, okay. CAMCOT score is a test for cognitive function, and we won't go into detail instead of how it works. But what the study was trying to do, so this is a Cambridge examination for mental disorder of the elderly. Okay, so it's a cognitive function test. So what is this diagram or this table is doing is showing you correlations. Now, so if we look at age, okay, age correlate with age, of course, it's 100%. So its correlation is 1. Age correlating with homocysteine is significant at 0.4, which is consistent with this. When you have age, when you get older, the concentration goes up. Okay, so when you get older, the concentration goes up, so you have a positive correlation. Okay. Now, then when you have this cognitive function, okay, is negatively correlated with age and negatively correlated with homocysteine. That means as you get older, as your homocysteine concentration gets higher, your cognitive function gets worse. Okay, and that's why you have a negative correlation. Okay. So B12 measurements across neurodegenerative disorders. So this is just an abstract of a recent article. So what it says is B12 levels were significantly lower at time of diagnosis in patients with PD. Now, what is PD? PD is Parkinson's disease. Then in patients with PSP, these are other various types of cognitive function, okay, disorders. So in different disorders, the rate of B12 decline range from negative 17 to negative 21. That means there's an on average this much of B12 decrease per year, which is much greater than the report from the remaining elderly population. So what this particular study is saying is B12 status decrease with age, but that decrease is much faster in patients with neurodegenerative disorders. Okay, so in this case, the conclusion was that need to determine whether comorbid B12 deficiency affects progression of this disorder. So again, trying to link B12 to other neurodegenerative disorders. Okay. Now, examples of gene-nutrient interaction. So we are going to give you one example of polymorphism. So this is a mutation of the transcobalamin 2. Now, what is transcobalamin 2? Transcobalamin 2 is the protein that binds the B vitamin in the blood. So it carries the B12 vitamin in the blood, and that is the transcobalamin. Because it is a protein, okay, so it will be affected by SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism. Okay, so the nucleotide polymorphism is that there is a substitution in this particular location, 776, which is supposed to be cytosine, then it goes for a change into guanine at this particular base pair. Okay, so this particular change will lead to the insertion of a different amino acid. Okay, so it's just one single amino acid change. Now, because this is a protein that carries the B12, okay, mutants have lower capability to bind and transport B12. Okay, what is the occurrence? Occurrence is estimated to be about 20%. That means 1 in 5 has this polymorphism. But who knows whether you have polymorphism or not if you don't do a genome study? So there are, 30 people here, maybe 5 of us have this polymorphism. We don't know. Okay? Another mutation, this is the mutation of the 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Now, what is this enzyme? This enzyme is the enzyme that converts 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate to 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. If we go back to all the way to this, okay. Reaction 5, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. So this one gives you 510. 510 gives you 5-methyl. So we are talking about this enzyme. Okay? We're talking about this enzyme. Now, this enzyme therefore determines how much 5-methyl is there. And therefore, 5-methyl goes to tetrahydrofolate. Okay? Now, even if you have adequate B12 folate, but you have a problem with this enzyme, then you're also in a little bit of trouble. Okay? Okay, so a different mutation, okay, so it involves base pair 677. So the problem will be valine instead of an alanine in that particular position. So you have wild type, you have heterozygous, and then you have homozygous genotype. Okay. Again, depending on the ethnic background, it can be less than 5 to 30%. 30% means 1/3. Right? lowest in Africans and Asians, but not in Japanese. Okay. Anyway, so the TT will be the homozygous genotype. Okay, that has the mutation. They may have normal or high homocysteine, but plasma folate is definitely lower. Okay, but they do respond to supplementation. Okay, so in this case, this particular study just comparing this mutation. So this is your heterozygous, heterozygous, and wild type. Okay, so we just highlight a number of parameters. So look at the HCY. HCY is the homocysteine. So your normal is 9, heterozygous is 9, and the homozygous is 12. Okay, so higher. And then this SVCAM. SVCAM is a vascular adhesion molecule. So this is a indicator of cardiac disease risk. Okay, risk factor. So again, these people with the homozygous genotype will have a significantly higher level of VSCAM. Then you have another factor, which is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a important free radical gas, which is important to relax your smooth muscle. So, and then in this case, the homozygous are lower than that of the wild type. Okay. So again, indicating that the polymorphism is affecting biological ability to metabolize certain aspects of parameters that are important for cardiovascular health. Now, we will go into some very quite simple and concept-wise, okay, and that is, and you only need to listen. Just look at the title. Low maternal B12 status is associated with offspring insulin resistance regardless of antenatal micronutrient supplementation in rural area of Nepal. And antenatal means around the birth time. Okay. Now the problem is that there are quite a bit of studies looking at maternal B vitamin status and how deficiency may affect the health situation of the offspring. One of the focus has been on vitamin B12. So this one is looking at if the mother has low B12, what happens to the offspring glucose homeostasis. So the bottom line is offspring born of B12 deficient mother have higher risk of insulin resistance when they were around 5 to 6 years old. Okay, so you can see the problem will come up not immediately, but sometimes at later stage of life. Again, this what we would call a cross-generation epigenetic effect. Okay, simply because the mother with B12 deficiency, okay, may have certain changes in the uterine environment, okay, that may eventually pass on to and affect the ability of the fetus to handle glucose. And so that's why these individuals start to have insulin resistance when they are older. Okay, if you're interested, you can always follow this. There are actually a fairly large number of studies. Another study showing here is serum folate and B12 concentration inversely correlated with adiposity. Okay, so I just want to highlight this, but just to caution you that correlation doesn't mean causal relationship. So there is what we say is there is a direct relationship between adiposity. That means the more fat you carry, okay, less B12, less folate you have. Now, as I said, you have to be careful. We don't know what is the cause, what is the consequence. Okay, but what it means is that in obesity situation, you have a coexisting situation, and that is this subject has low B12 folate status. Okay. And then furthermore, with the situation is people who are taking oral hypoglycemic medication. Metformin, I'm not sure if you are familiar with this. This is a pills taken orally to lower your blood glucose by a lot of individuals. Either they are type 2 or they are pre-diabetics. So millions of people are taking metformin. But metformin interferes with B12 absorption. Okay? So you have to make sure that for those who are taking metformin, they may want to make sure that they have an adequate intake of the B vitamin. Now, this is a study which shows that, and you can see that this information are known for many years. Okay? Increased intake of calcium can reverse vitamin B12 malabsorption induced by metformin. Okay, you can do this yourself, but the mechanism appears to be here. That the drug, okay, appears to that the drugs interfere with the calcium-dependent binding of the intrinsic factor B12 complex to the receptor, okay, which is calcium-dependent, okay. So what it is saying is metformin interfere with the interaction between B12 intrinsic factor complex with the receptor. So problem is receptor recognition, more or less. Somehow this interaction, this binding is calcium dependent. And so if you increase calcium intake, you can effectively override that effect of metformin. Okay? So that means either you have a good calcium intake, or if you take metformin, you may want to make sure that you have adequate amount of B12. Now, other stuff related to B vitamins, in this case, we turn to folate. There are a lot of studies, either positive or negative, in terms of folate supplementation in suppressing certain cancers. And in this case, this is a case control study indicating that there is a reasonable protective effect, but specifically for the BRCA1 mutation carrier. So there are, again, the breast cancer people have different exposed to different degree of risk, and supplementation may be effective only for certain types of people. Again, these are very controversial type of information that you need to go through, and a lot of studies. So I'm just highlighting to you that there are a lot of controversies here. Now, so good folate status is essential, but this does not mean the more the better, because if you go to the literature, particularly after the so-called recommendation that pregnant female needs to be supplemented with folate. Then there are studies indicating that, well, too much folate actually may not be that good. Okay? The problem is we don't know what we mean by too much. So this is the problem. Okay? But there are arguments as to, and you can read it here. The argument is going back to the original structure of the supplementation. So the pills or the supplements are in the form of folic acid, which is the oxidized form. Okay. Now, if you recall, we need to convert the folic acid to dihydrofolate, then to tetrahydrofolate, which is the reduced form. Okay, before it goes into different structures. Okay. Now, the problem is if you have a very high dose of folic acid ingested, okay, and if the body cannot handle, okay, the conversion, so to speak, okay, then you have a problem of so-called accumulation of unmetabolized folic acid, okay, and this has been associated with certain risk depending on which paper you read and so on. So as I said here, okay, ingested folic acid is reduced by the reductase, dihydrofolate reductase, and subsequently methylated through the 1-carbon substitution, and then released into the systemic circulation. The reduction of folic acid is a slow process. Hence, some subjects would have unmetabolized folic acid. That means the folic acid itself forming the tetrahydrofolate after ingestion of high doses of folate. So, high folic acid exposure or high unmetabolized folic acid has been reported to be associated with impaired cognition and certain cancer. So depending on which paper you read and so on. So the bottom line is, yes, supplementation of folate is quite effective and shown to reduce the incidence of neurotype defects. And folate, of course, is important for a variety of body function. But if you take in too much, are there potential problems? And that's the purpose of showing you this. The answer is we don't know. Okay, it's just that there are different reports. What you see here is a study, okay, showing you a correlation plot between serum 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So this 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, 6,3 tetrahydrofolate, and the y-axis is a test, which is a test for cognition. So the bottom line here is low score reflect cognitive impairment in the elderly with low serum 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So this is what we are looking at here. So we know that low food is no good. Okay, so we should make sure that particularly the elderlies, they should have an adequate intake of the B vitamins, including folate. But the caution is not too much. Now, this is yet another problem. Okay, very complicated, and I want to just make it simple in here. So the key findings is down here to let you be aware of an interaction between folate and B12. So what you see here is when we say compare to subjects with low serum total folate. Those with higher concentration but low B12 status has 2 times odds to have impaired cognition and 3 times odds to have anemia. What is the bottom line here? The bottom line here is that if you have high folate but low B12, then the situation is worse compared to the control group, so to speak. So what kind of situation that you end up having a high folate and low B12? You take in folate supplementation without B12, particularly for elderlies. So again, everything goes to a balance. Not only this particular slides, there are other which I'm not showing you, also showing problems when you have high folate and low B12. And high folate, low B12 end up, as what I said, one of the problem will be the metafolate trap, okay? But probably there are more problems than the metafolate trap that we don't know. But in this particular situation, plus other situations that we encounter in the literature, you do not want a situation which you have high folate and low B12. And then there are other aspects. So folate and colorectal cancer. In this case, then, as I said, again, folate is important. Okay. On the other hand, its association with tumorigenesis is still unknown, but likely that there may be a so-called U-shaped relationship. So that means without you have problem, too much you have problem. So again, how you define a so-called optimum level is again the current focus in the scientific community. So the bottom line is that we have to realize there are a lot of vitamins that we know that many subgroups of populations may be deficient, particularly in the elderly. I think the elderly has been a very large community which has extensive problems in terms of vitamins and mineral deficiency or suboptimum level. But on the other hand, if you are taking a particular supplement without balancing the others, then you may run into some problem. So one is too much folate, or the other is too much folate but not enough B12, and then I can give you other examples. For example, in this case, if you have a diabetic situation, then you may also run into the problem of thiamine and other B vitamins. So fairly complicated. And when we go to this Friday, then we talk about vitamin D. Then vitamin D is also involved. So again, very complicated situation, and therefore we always say balanced diet, and that really means that you don't focus on one single ingredient or nutrient, because you never know whether the more is the better.
Yes. Normally, from our daily diet, this situation will not appear. I mean, the normal diet, the excess folate and the B12 will not appear.
You mean too much or too little?
Yeah, too much.
Too much, most likely, unless you are taking in taking
from the
supplements. Okay,
from the normal diet will not appear.
it's very seldom. Otherwise, why would we have a high incidence of deficiency? And that is because we usually take in less than what we need. But then some people say, well, in this case, I need to take it more, and the more the better concept is what we are trying to caution.
And you mentioned earlier in the slide that we have a found that we have a buffer inside the body for the B12, right? Then we can keep them for some years. And so does it mean that this is the buffer that when we use them, and we just take them off?
What I'm saying is, we are born with a reasonable reserve of B12 in the liver, and then of course you have dietary provision. You take in B12 in a diet. So if you stop taking B12, for example, then you will be using your own body reserve, right? And what I'm saying is, because of our ability to have some conservation mechanism, and also our body's own reserve, it takes a long time to deplete that reserve pool, and it may take up to 5-10 years, depending on your previous status. Okay, but it does happen, and that's why a lot of vegetarians, if you hit the literature, you will see a lot of vegetarians and elderlies, okay, whether they are vegetarian or not, a high percentage of deficiency. For elderlies, there are a lot of reasons. They don't eat well, they forget to eat, or whatever, or they are not economically good enough to buy enough food, things like that. Okay, but it takes 5-10 years to become deficient. But the impact of a suboptimum status, that means, okay, just say anemia. So we say, okay, for men, your cutoff is this. So the cutoff is an indication that you're definitely having problem. But if you have a lower level, doesn't mean that you are not functioning 100%. So for example, if the cutoff is 13 and if you are 12, okay, you can say I'm okay, and I won't say you're not okay. But on the other hand, if you are putting yourself into exertions, for example, you have to run for a long time, you may get exhausted much sooner than someone whose hemoglobin is 13. So how you define optimum and suboptimum, okay, is again something which is difficult to sort out. So what we say that why I say, okay, you are deficient and I'm not, because we set a cutoff level, okay. But if I am 5% lower than cutoff, just 5% lower than cutoff, or 5% higher than cutoff, but depending on what the cutoff is. What does that mean? No one knows. But anyway, even with that cutoff, okay, for whatever, for B12 level in the blood or whatever, or MMA, things like that, for sure, there are a lot of literatures indicating that old people, vegetarians, have a high risk of B vitamin deficiency. Okay, and that most likely is related to dietary intake. So if you eat better, you don't need the supplement. On the other hand, if you are not eating better, but you think, I need folate, and then you go and take folate, you may create an even worse imbalance.
So for a normal person, usually how much? I mean, we're talking about the research that they different keep. So how much that usually?
We don't know. Again, depending on your diet history, your health. So we don't know how long it will take for your body to deplete. Okay? But what we say is that if your intake is inadequate over a long period of time, then for B12, okay, because there is some reserve in the body, it won't show up within 1 or 2 years usually. Now remember, B vitamins are water soluble, just like vitamin C. So you need it regularly because we don't store water soluble vitamin in our body for that much, different from the fat soluble vitamins. But B12 is a little bit different, as I said. It takes much longer to deplete. Okay? So the B12 deficiency won't show up as soon as the deficiency of other vitamins. Okay? So for example, say vitamin B1, thiamine. If you don't take thiamine, you may end up having very in 1 month or 2 months. I don't know. But if you don't take B12 for 1 or 2 months, I don't think you have problem that shows up as signs of vitamin B12 deficiency, because, as I said, that reserve and the ability, the reserve pool in the body, and also the ability to conserve some and reuse some of the B12. Okay, B12 is somehow excreted with the bile and then get reabsorbed again. So there is some recirculation of B12 in your body, and that's why it takes quite a long time to get depleted. But if you don't take it for a long time, then definitely it will deplete. That's for sure. Okay.
B12 is it takes the most time. The other B vitamin. Okay.
And again, B12 is the one that is derived from animal source only. Okay. You don't get B12 from plant source. That's why I say vegan people who are pure vegetarians are high risk, because you only get B12 from animal products. Okay. In fact, animals themselves do not make B12. This is the bacteria in the intestine that make B12, and so that animal has the B12. And since we eat the animal meat, so we get the B12. Okay? But our intestine does not produce B12. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so see you
Friday.
So Friday we will talk about calcium and stuff. Okay? 其他嘅講先。
B 有含 B 冇問題，好多人食
B6都有嘅，
好高都，因為佢呢個其他咧就係食手法嘅嘢，泰國啲人呢又食，好多人食嘅。我哋都唔係好泰國
我知啊，
係啊係，但係佢哋呢個係我哋叫 Q 啲人，即係我咧。
即係佢哋啲業界咧都
佢冇乜 control，但係佢就唔係 high dose，係 low dose。如果醫生開嗰陣就再 high dose 啲。如果係咁樣賣on the market，預計就你做咩嘅？
即係
差唔多啦，
佢要啲得㗎啦。
都幫你幫你知道你係咪？我哋嗰時
地下有紙，冇問題，係。食多咗屙翻出嚟，你諗。我出嚟就唔得，不過碌得大個料，嗰啲紙係一向運過。
我姐姐都冇緊。
有冇手尾？即係肯定你乾出嚟嘅。
真係屙嘅過程會釘嚟睇咯。
你呢個
唔係一定嘅，佢好似收嚟，佢未屙出嚟之前已經衰咗啦。
即係問題就係，即係有好多嘢係未知㗎嘛。咁即係呢個係嗰個即係，所以好多人話即係咩最安全咧？最安全嘅食物。除咗食物之外啦，你嗰啲所謂貓招龜動物咧，因為佢啲全部好少，全部都係差唔多係跟
最安全
嘅，
嘅係啊，
跟啱啲嘅。
唔好食死一隻，
嗰啲咧就包冇事嘅，包冇事。有冇用就另一回事。
係啊，
包冇事先。
貓招龜動物係最安全，
因為佢貓招龜動物十幾廿隻入喺度入邊嚟。跟啱啲嘅，
所以安全。
或者啱啲嘅原因所以永遠安全嗰啲就，
但唔知有冇效？
咪好過冇嘅，因為呢時係有時唔夠嘅食，即係香港人食。
問題就係話，你唔知你夠唔夠嘅時候，咁佢唔知
食個 minimum 咯。
我哋教nutrition咧話叫人食好啲，咁啊食 balance diet。如果你擔心嘅咁，食得多啲龜啲。
食個 minimum。
咁啊，差唔多都已經即係
夠晒，
再唔係食2粒嘅杯咩？但係即係如果你食，即係如果 individual 嗰啲咧，
嗰啲危險。
嗰啲大好多嘅，即係你睇翻個咁佢唔知嗰個就 selling point 就話咁先勁啲啊嘛！你啲人覺得越勁越好咁樣。
UL 咩嘛？
咁問題就係話你嗰個你係咪真係越勁好咧？我唔知。即係呢個就係嗰個 issue。之尤其是係嗰個 water solid 你安出嚟，咁會唔知咁有啲，因為即係我上個禮拜冇話俾你聽，即係如果你食 NMN，佢即係12個鐘頭最高，跟住24到8小時落翻去咁樣，咁所以你如果你話我一定要 hit 到嗰個 level 咁，所以你梗係要日日食㗎。但問題就係話biological嘅嘢係咪真係要係嗰個 level 先至？因為嗰個 concept 就變咗係一個 drug 一個 therapeutic 嘅 approach。咩叫 therapeutic approach？即係話藥啲藥我要，譬如你食 aspirin 咁樣，我知道佢話你一定你知道咁你食100個 milligram 喎，你梗係食1個 gram aspirin。咁話你咧，你話哇嗰啲 即係呢個 prevent 呢個 cardiovascular problem，你食 baby aspirin 喎，佢食 baby aspirin 有成100嘅喎，有成1000啊嘛。咁depends on你要嘅 purpose 係乜嘢啫？
而家成
呢兩呢個包湯咧，下邊個泡湯咧都比較阿 Sir 想問問之前我想問咧，嗰個游水呢個係另外課題。游水咧嗰個游水啊，即係嗰個 COVID-19 咧，呢個唔關事，即係我想問下嘅，嗰個游水點解唔係傳染咧？即係嗰個而家疫情嗰度。唔好意思，唔好意思，我先即係話，如果游水
咩游水？
游水，
我 swimming 嗰度喺度。
唔好意思，啱啱我佢嚟咗游水 swimming 嗰度，咁嗰個對游水唔可又唔驚傳嗰個疫情 COVID-19 嗰度。
係no idea咧，因為佢我諗佢assume可能係因為水裏邊有 chlorine 係嘛？
係啦，即係嗰個情況，你驚擔心傳染又冇啲事又，即係你游水。
因為
即係理論上空氣傳播咧，佢喺水裏邊究竟有幾 effective 我唔知，但係到泳池水裏邊 chlorine 㗎嘛。係
啊，冇錯，即係而家我就咁諗就因為。
咁只不過就係話，即係你去游水嘅時候冇理由戴口罩咁解啫。你一個泳池，你有冇理由喺度叫人一上咗水就戴個口罩？即係所以
驚嗰度
個問題啊。咁所以即係呢個唔會嘅，你個大趨勢咁依家即係去到一個 stage，咁你覺得即係都應該要放啦。咁你即係你 concern 嘅你戴口罩你游水啦嚇。但係即係理論上嚟講，喺水裏邊，如果你啲水係有 chlorine 嘅，照計嚟講就應該已經同你洗抹手都差唔多。
OK，唔得。好，咁啊，純粹問一問即係呢度呢度啱啱正諗起嘅時候，我阿 Sir 可唔可以講或者你一數你講個先？
呢度其實正話嗰可能有一啲即係因為呢個 diagram 簡化咗一步，就係話，即係你由呢個 tetrahydrofolate，OK 點樣去methyl 咧，就唔係咁樣抌個 methyl 入去，而係要去到嗰個呢個三角形
係
THF 510 5 methyl
係
呢個係咁樣，你而家個 diagram 就係嚟到好似 THF，OK， 咁跟住咧去到呢度，再喺呢度先做呢個出嚟咯，即係唔係話咁樣突然間動一聲整咗呢個出嚟。
我明白，即係中間呢啲個隔喺呢藍色嘅藍色隔喺度就變咗呢個啦，即係嗰個 H53C，同埋呢度咧，我哋剛才討論咗，我就唔好明。如果呢個一個 UG 咧，呢個 footfall 咧係等於0.6嘅話，咁即係換句上講，0.6嗰個folic acid 咧個份量啦嚇，應該係多過咩嘅啦，相對
唔係份量，
剛才你唔係講份量，咁但係個
唔係份量，因為個係重量嘅問題啫嘛。
係冇錯。
咁所以佢你個 footfall 重過本身重過個 folic acid， 但係佢重係因為多咗幾嚿菇狀微喺度，咁所以你要 account for 翻佢個菇狀微嘅時候咧，咁變咗就係話你話少啲嘅 folic acid 都可以等於一個 microgram 嘅 folic 啫嘛。
哦，咁樣所以
0.4係個菇狀微。
係啦，冇錯啦，係啦，菇狀微。得啦，我明啦，即係我剛才 concept 錯咗啫，唔該晒先。好，係你。
你哋31秒32，我一樣。
唔係嘅，嗱，最緊要咧就係你DUMP 去 EMP， 呢度咧就高嚟嘅。EGMP 就去到 DNA 啦，呢度。 好啦，咁嗰個 radiation 喺邊度嚟咧？就喺呢度。
係啦，唔好意思，我哋要 set 下場嘅嘢㗎啦。
好快，好快，2分鐘咁樣。第一件事，我哋擺好少嘅 video 嘅呢啲落去，喺個 test kit 度咁樣。咁呢度因為咁，佢呢度好慢，咁所以你變咗有個 DNA 又有啲 radiation 㗎啦，係咁你有個 value 好啦，跟住咧，你又係擺台灣咁多嘅係加呢啲，咁呢個佢呢度就去呢度。咁變咗你有另外一個 root 俾 EDM 嘅，咁係咪？
呢個即係
呢度，咁佢咪溝起咗呢度咯？
即係呢個
咁呢個少咗嘛？咁咪即係，所以叫做 impair。
即係首先要有一呢個，跟住
係啦。
再對比加埋呢個之後呢個。
譬如打個比喻咧，就咁樣加呢個係100咁先算得當係啊，當你100咁。如果 normal 嘅人咧，你加咗啲 U 落去咧，即係變咗75先算，因為少咗嘛，少咗全部咁啊，啲人喺呢個講啊，呢個當呢個係 normal 嘅，但係因為呢一個係 folate reserve dependent， 咁如果你 folate deficient 嘅時候，咁佢係咪都少咗啊？即係少咗，唔即係呢度多咗啦，可能呢邊90咯。
但係個目的係咩事咯？
咁你咪即係可以分別到，即係咁樣你可以分別到嗰個人有冇 control。咁同埋就係話，你可能係 control， 又可能係 control， 可能係兩個邊，因為呢個 step 就要靠即係fully control 㗎嘛。咁所以如果你即係受命嘅情況之下，你可以分到究竟嗰個係 fully control 啦，定係 control 定係 fully control。
你要上先。
不過有一個唔好明白，都唔知一唔得。呢個數據咧，令到好 confuse。
擺出去先，唔好講住佢。
我現在是自己嘅講。
一個係
我想聽。翻譯咩嘅好似？
我見到一個係口兩邊嘅片嘴。
哦，係我意思。喺之前嗰度嘅，3角形嗰度。
喺呢度。
其實呢個所講嘅會有咩？你睇翻 reaction seven，因為嗰個 reaction seven。Reaction seven from image transfer 7。
啊，首先打啲27年嗰啲，呢度，喺呢度，好啦。
呢一度咧就 show 一個 one direction 出嚟，即係好難講有唔同嘅喺唔同嘅 paper 裏邊整出嚟嘅 diagram。總言之就係呢一個去呢度啫嘛。咁呢個去呢一度咧，呢度已經 show 我加咗落去呢個 HIS 我加落去。唔係呢個 HIS 就係 histidine 啊嘛，即係你即係其實唔係你游翻呢個檔，你游翻呢度，退翻得。嗱，呢個其實呢度啊，就係呢度啊 FIGLU 嘛 ，FIGLU 就係呢條嚟啊嘛。OK，CHF 啊嘛，有呢個分母啊嘛，即係呢個 reaction 啊嘛 ，reaction cell 咁只不過呢一度咧就 show 一個two direction 出嚟。係，呢一個咧。就 show one direction，咁問題係咪 two direction 咧？其實咧，如果你睇翻個 big picture 咧，就係嘅，因為咧，就算佢唔整個兩個 direction 出嚟，呢個去呢度，呢個去呢度，呢個去呢度，呢個留翻呢度，咁所以即係喺佢呢一個 diagram 佢就冇 show 過兩個 direction，喺度 show 過兩個 direction 出嚟，咁只不過就係話。即係就算喺度嚟講，佢一樣可以去翻 teacher， 即係只不過佢就咁兜去點解啫？即係佢咁樣兜過去，佢咁樣兜去。因為嗱你依個 reaction 其實依度啊嘛，係。只不過佢 show 咗兩係咪就係 reversible 啊嘛？係一個 reversible。呢度就係淨係 show 個 one arrow 出嚟啊嘛，係。即係 one way 啊嘛，係。但係我哋意思就係話，就算佢 show 個溫維出嚟，唔係代表佢唔可以變翻做 THF， 因為跟住可以咁走啊嘛。哦。所以即係喺呢個即係呢個 reaction 咧，即係如果你睇翻跟住再睇後邊嗰度咧，有冇話？FIGLU expression 就係一個 marker 行高嚟㗎嘛。FIGLU 唔呢個嘢咧，咪即係就呢個啦。咁因為呢個 reaction 係要呢度喺呢度。咁如果你冇呢個，你又係冇啦。咁對唔到嘅時候，即係就算你即係就算你呢個即係呢個喺嘅情況之下，呢個所謂嘅 reversible reaction 喺度嚟 show 個 reversible reaction， 即係只不過就話你係如果係你都咁兜過去啦，咁如果你呢個 definition 咧，依家講呢個 definition 啊，唔夠呢個。去唔到呢度，呢個 reaction 由呢度去呢度啊嘛，咁所以呢個嘢咪高咯，就咁解啫嘛。即係佢個過唔到咁就挑明呢啲嘢喺度，係高。所以呢個高嘅原理就係話 measure 你嘅 exclusion 解啫嘛 ，exclusion 咪呢個，一般同 histidine 就係呢個。
即係如果我想翻譯調翻轉嘅話，你係 reversible，即係話其實佢一個 就一條，即係變咗呢個就去即係着左邊嗰個咧。咁另外右邊嗰個咧就咁樣去，即係好事情。
唔係，即係我嘅意思就係、即係佢呢個 diagram 就直情呢個可以落翻轉行咁解啫嘛。即係呢個 diagram
係
呢個 diagram 啦，佢就冇 show 到掉翻轉嚟行，只不過就話咁落，咁但係咁落未必代表唔可以去翻呢度，因為你講兜條路你可以翻呢度。咁所以即係理論上你係可以 regenerate 翻 GHF 咁解，即係只不過咧就係話，係咪可以用即係呢個接佢呢邊？咁呢個我都唔敢發聲出嚟，但係正如我都講就係話，就算呢個係 one way direction 嚟講，佢咁佢可以兜到翻。咁只不過嗰個 issue 喺呢度嚟講就係話，即係個 focus 係喺即係當你呢一個 division 嘅時候，你呢一個即係當呢個 division 嘅時候，你其他嗰啲都 division 㗎嘛，即係唔會淨冇呢個 division 㗎嘛。咁所以佢度呢一個咁解啫嘛。
即係一個 focus 分別，呢個係一個 marker，去睇下係咪有呢個點傳上呢一個。
係啊，即係如果高就係有點傳線㗎。
係啦，呢個我嘅。
OK。
有一個叫 suppression 嗰個咧 ，suppression
仲有嗰度，嗰度。
哦 ，OK。
即係喺個黑板度。
OK， 好，
唔該晒。喂，
唔好意思啊。
得，唔該晒。
有時即係比較誇張。佢開頭呢啲咁樣你理解咧？我頭咧就以為係兩大就可以每一個可以轉嚟轉去，呢個轉啊，呢個轉嚟，即係我哋一個，即係而家一個咁落，去到呢一度咧，即係 FIGLU 就呢個啊嘛，呢個係啦，呢個就係呢個啊嘛，呢個首先上個先呢個咧，就由一個就去到上嗰個啊嘛，係嘛？呢個。
嗱，其實我諗佢最主要講呢個咧，就而家佢想喺呢一個as a marker，因為呢個即係睇下佢係一個 indicator 係咪嗰個 folio 係咪跌少少？L exclusion 呢個我就分呢個啦，咁係咪睇下佢係呢個？Piston B 啊嘛，睇呢個如果聚積嘅咧，咁就即係如果呢個落咗嚟嘅話，咁佢呢度咪過唔到佢咯。即係如果因為佢呢一個由呢度到呢度嘅時候，都需要呢一個環㗎嘛，係嘛？咁所以佢就係即係如果呢個冇呢個電子傳事嘅話，咁就要知道可能
佢電子傳事嘅佢即係冇效，唔夠啊，
唔夠啊，不足，咁佢就會呢個冇 accumulate 啦，即係呢個咁呢個 assessment of folio status 啊嘛，呢個 folio 嘅喎，係嘛？咁即係話佢用RBC 啊呢啲嘢啦嚇，咁即係話如果呢啲 exclusion 真係多嘅話咧，咁意思就係話咧，即係你可能都會出嚟啦，咁就表示你冇 follow 入嘅，咁呢個就唔可以咁用呢一個指呢個啦，係嘛？咁呢個特殊嘅咧，呢個咪嗰個嘅咧，
即係其實佢而家係有唔同嘅即係嗱呢個 O 嚟佢唔夠，咁落到嚟之後咧，
佢如果唔夠，佢落唔到嚟㗎嘛。
係。
咁呢個又落唔到嚟，咁咪積聚咗咯。而家佢最主要係講喺個
行咗出去，
佢唔可以變嘅一個，佢唔可以變呢一個 protein。
佢唔可以變佢。
佢唔可以變，咁佢積聚喺度咯。
係
嘛？點解佢唔可以變咧？因為佢呢個方嚟冇啊嘛，落唔到嚟啊嘛。即係佢落咗嚟嘅時候先係咁㗎嘛。
即係唔計俾佢。
係啦， 咁頭先個科我覺得唔緊要嘅，即係話 one way two way，即係睇呢個要講開呢度係有船㗎嘛。即係其實呢個似乎聽講就係自己嘅講呢個啫嘛。
咁佢而家呢個咧，你又將佢夠遠啦。嗱，OK，嗱呢個轉咧就咁佢就點樣轉翻佢？呢度佢有50度啊嘛，咁點樣轉翻佢？因為佢落唔到嚟點樣轉翻？明唔明先？即係呢個方面咧，佢落唔到嚟。
反而我唔知道佢呢度可以轉過去。
係啦。
呢度可以轉落去啊嘛。
係啦。
或者佢又可以轉翻過嚟喎。
嗱，咁如果唔係佢都，
咁咪等你點轉過去？轉翻過去啊？下啲排隊。係嘛？
我頭好清晰嘅啦。
喂，你有冇嗰個第4嗰個節抽嚟㗎？
喂，係喂，我都食嘅。喂，我有做咗，不過有啲唔好味。我有啊呢度，我俾你。但係上堂先有講啊。
唔係啊，我冇帶呢條嘢喎，我冇帶翻嚟做啊。
但係有佢唔係我私人佢 WhatsApp 有個咩？
書我書
上網冇
我睇過冇。
邊條？全部。
係啊，全部俾我啊！
我睇下先，我睇下先，因為我做唔到。邊度？OK，我中有我睇過有。咁但係
我睇過冇啊，因為佢錄影嘅時候咧，佢係冇開機或者冇 share 個 screen 啊。
但我開機。OK，我
唔係你本身有冇 friend 份嘢先？
有。
你咪借問俾我，你
我 WhatsApp 俾你。
你 WhatsApp 俾我嘛？
但我 anyway 我抄俾你啦，我抄俾你。
你抄你已經做得啦。
唔係我做咗嘛？
你做咩？
咁我只做一次啊嘛，之前做咗啊嘛。啊，我有空檔咧，
你邊嚟㗎？我走翻先啦，你啲出嚟啊！
你好。